Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Jess, and you're going to say your last name for me because I didn't ask you.
That's okay. My name is Jess Patz.
Patz, welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Oh, I am a mom of four, which is crazy. My youngest is only 16 months, and I had to really adjust from the mom of three to the mom of four. But I am a motivational speaker and domestic violence advocate professionally.
So I don't think that we've actually, you asked me before I hit record what topics we haven't covered, and I don't think that we've covered that topic on my podcast. So that's
Okay.
kismet timing, right?
Perfect. Meant to be then. I love being able to kind of spread awareness around that topic, especially the part of being a mom while recovering and going through that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So before we go into that, I do want to hear
Mm-hmm.
uh, how you adjusted from 3 to 4.
Oh my gosh. You know what's wild? Because once you have, I had three and you feel like you have a herd, and I'm like, Psh, I've got this. I'm good. Put like four, five, six in the mix. It doesn't matter. It's a number at this point. Baby number four threw me for a loop. She
Mm.
came in 11 pounds, 6 ounces into the world 2 weeks early and made her presence known. And she's the
Wow.
biggest blessing. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I went through postpartum depression and it was challenging for me. I was in such a good groove with three. We have a big gap. So our oldest after the baby is 9, then 15, then 17. And I knew how to do that. I had my scheduling down. I felt very empowered. My career was in a good place. And then bam, it took me a minute. And I really honestly had to hit pause on a lot of things, which was uncomfortable, but extremely needed in that moment.
Yeah. Absolutely. My listeners know very well that I was a surrogate and I was kept
Okay.
pregnant with twins. And that was along the similar lines of throwing me for a loop. That was not part of the plan, in my
Yeah.
opinion, in my awareness. The universe had a different idea. And it was a lot of fun. It was a beautiful journey with ups and downs, as every journey is. Um, and I had my first C-section. Um,
Okay.
and I was the kind of person where I would give birth and I was back to doing like life 3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And with a C-section, that's not happening. You're not doing life 3 days later. I was like,
No.
I was freaking out because my boyfriend wanted to take my son to the snow. And I thought, based on what he said, that I was expected to go also 10 days postpartum. And I'm just like, but, but there's pain and there's healing
Yeah.
and there's like, what if I fall? What if I'm cold? What if I'm bored? Like and I'm in tears. Turned out he
Oh.
wasn't expecting me to go. He was saying, I actually hadn't thought about whether you were going to go or not. And I took that
Oh.
statement as, I didn't think about whether you were going to go or not because you're going to go. It was like that was the expectation
Right.
or the assumption in my head.
Right.
Anyway, so
Oh.
my mom went from 3 to
Mm.
4. Um,
Okay.
I was 8.
or close to 7 or close to 8 when my sister was born. So that's interesting, the alignment of you guys. And you know, she was a teacher, so she had my sister in June. It was perfect that she didn't have to
Yeah.
do the adjustment of working, but you're, I'm assuming, self-employed.
Yes.
And
Maternity leave didn't really exist.
right.
Yeah. And I have an incredible husband who's very supportive, and that was new for me, to have a partner that was so supportive. And I just felt super confident that we were going to fall into rhythm. I have built in incredible babysitters to a point and older siblings, and that did not happen. I also had my first C-section,
Mm.
wickedly underestimated the recovery time. I mean, just wow. Not that I thought it would be simple, but it's interesting on the front end. It was almost like instant baby. You go in, they give you meds, bing, bang, boom, you have a baby. And with vaginal deliveries, obviously that was never the case. It was long laboring and hours and pain and meds or not meds and all these things, but the recovery was different. So it like flip flopped. And then I actually had hernia surgery about a month and a half after my C-section.
Oh
And
no.
then right before our daughter turned a year, I had an emergency hysterectomy. So, on top of the emotional stuff, it's wild when you're in it. You're just kind of going. But then now, when I can take a step back, I'm like, I had 3 semi major surgeries in under a year abdominally. That's kind of a lot for your body to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine that you learned lots of um, lessons around giving yourself grace.
Oh, yeah. Lots of lessons. And I didn't want to listen to them, quite honestly.
Right?
Because again, as a speaker, my career was like picking up momentum, and I was getting wonderful opportunities and meeting awesome people. And I was in just this groove. It felt great. And I did not want to slow down. And I don't like to slow down a whole lot as a person. I'm very passionate. And once I get this idea, I want to run with it. And the fact that not even mentally, I couldn't keep up. I had lost the desire for things. My passion was not where it usually was. I had no energy. I had very little drive. And so it was just this hamster wheel of like imposter syndrome and what am I doing? And I had to do, I don't know, at a point where I thought I was more healed maybe than I was with certain things. I had to do more healing and more growth and learning how to adjust and allowing myself to learn, admitting, okay, I may be a mom and have been a mom for 16, 17 years, but I'm never going to know everything. And my situation is not identical to anybody else's. So I just have to give myself grace to figure it out in my best way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think there's a hustle culture out, especially for women.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the hustle culture. Like it's
Right.
not wrong completely.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfectly perfect if you have some built-in downtime and like self-care. You know, if you're taking care of yourself properly, hustle
Yeah.
culture is amazing. You get a lot
Right.
of stuff done, you know?
I know. See, I've come to like really struggle with that phrase in all honesty, because I was very stereotypical. Like I prided myself on that hustle culture, and I really weighed my successfulness almost on how busy I was in that hustle culture mentality. You got to be booked and busy, doing all the things all the time. And if I wasn't, I felt like I wasn't meeting my productivity requirements, and I needed to be doing the stuff in order to keep up with the world around me. And for that reason, I think we've just gotten to this weird, unhealthy place because, man, you don't have to hustle in front of everybody. First of all, you can hustle. I find so much more joy in hustling silently now until I'm ready to share with everyone, especially when mentally I haven't been in the best place for the past year. When you start sharing some things with people who aren't on the same wavelength as you and you're not real secure, that messes with your head. So it's such a hit or miss. You have to hustle when you're self-employed in general. However, hustle at your own speed was what I like to encourage people. My version of hustle doesn't have to be the same as yours. And right now, the way I'm hustling is different than maybe it was in the season past, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend and I were watching a person on it's a guy that I can't remember his name, but he's a little controversial with his ideas, and he's
Mm-hmm.
been labeled as a misogynist, and but he has a really good message, and I think that he's misinterpreted.
Okay.
And so it's good that I don't remember his name. Um, but he was talking about this idea of whether or not depression exists, and I believe that there is a level of depression that happens, that is, that does exist, and
Mm-hmm.
there is a level of depression that is created from, and this is my boyfriend's definition,
Mm-hmm.
created from um, not knowing your potential, knowing what you could do, and not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from a man's point of view. And
Right.
as a woman, I feel like that's a very
Yeah.
dangerous definition, because
Right.
it's like, I know that I can do better, but I sometimes I know that I can do better because I'm watching you do better, and not because
Ooh.
I'm taking into account my gifts and talents and energy and number of children and
Yes.
responsibilities and all of that.
Right. Absolutely. It's an interesting thought process. I've seen a couple of people lately express similar sentiments, almost even to the extreme side of depression is self-imposed. Like it's not the scientific medical diagnosis. We have to be able to work our way out of it. And that I disagree with, obviously. However, we are our own worst enemy. Once that spark is kind of lit when it comes to depression, then there's anxiety and you're comparing and you just feel so abnormal. Sometimes we can make it worse.
Mhm.
But I love what you said about comparing, that you have to take into account timing is everything. And if it's not clicking for you right now, I've talked about this recently because it's so recent, and for a hot minute, it was really frustrating for me. I launched a conference last April. It went great, way better than I could have ever expected. I was like on fire from this event. So we're rocking and rolling, decide to go on tour. We're going to go to Houston a week after I get married, which that in itself, I set myself up for failure. I'm like, no, it's fine. I can do it. It'll be great. Couldn't do it. Then we pushed it. Couldn't do it. I had an emergency hysterectomy, couldn't travel. And I felt like a huge failure because I looked at other people who were doing similar things with their careers, who are on that kind of this like same trajectory, and they're just skyrocketing and they're continuing to go. And now, we're in February. Things have calmed down. I took a massive pause on my career for the most part on big things. And it's a blessing because had I pushed forward with that, I wouldn't have been my best self. Mentally, physically, I would not have been prepared. And then you're going into these new projects and new seasons not fully empowered. And that's tough to realize. But when you do, there's always a reason. There's always a purpose to those pauses in life, and the meaning behind them may take a minute to kind of understand, even if it's frustrating. But now I'm glad that it was paused and other things, doors have opened, new people have come into my life that I want it to be a part of that process now. So I did not like it. I didn't like it one bit at the time. And I felt like, well, I'm just not going to do it. What? I'm going to quit. I'm going to go work at Burger King. Nothing against working at Burger King. My daughter works there, but like, going to get a 9 to 5. This is
Yeah.
not for me. I failed. That was my chance. I blew it. I'm done. And that's not the case. It just wasn't my time. That's fine.
And so I had a coffee date with a girl. I haven't seen her in many, many years. And like she wasn't aware that I was divorced, and so I've been divorced for 9+ years. So it's been
Okay.
a while since I've known her, but this kind of segues into into our other topic. Um,
Yeah.
but she was in a very toxic relationship with the father of her child. And she was praying for a way out of this situation.
Got it.
And she ended up in jail for 3.5 years, serving 3.5 years of a 5-year sentence.
Okay.
And it was, a bogus charge because she basically accidentally rear-ended someone, and that person said that she intentionally rear-ended them and that her car dragged this woman and that it was attempted murder and yada yada.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, and so she took the reason she went to jail, they proved that the other woman was lying and everything. And the reason that she went to jail is because she didn't trust the system. She was facing 25 to life, and she's like, yeah, I'm going to take the deal of 5 years because
Oh.
I don't trust the system.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought that up because she was praying for this way out of this relationship with her toxic, father of her child.
Yeah.
And my response to her was, well, God answered your prayer, just not in the way you were expecting.
Right? Isn't that how it goes a lot of times? You're like, I pray for financial stability, and he gives you all the tools to create that for yourself and challenges along the way, but you've got to, it's always unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about domestic violence. And
Yeah.
that sounded a lot cheerier than than the topic it
No,
allowed.
it's
But
okay.
yeah.
That's actually a goal of mine in 2023 is to remind people we're going to talk about sad stuff and we're going to go to deep, dark places, but it doesn't have to be sad because now I'm sharing from a place of safety and healing and growth. And I want to encourage other people that they can get to those places as well.
Mhm.
But I was in an extremely abusive marriage. I got married very young. I was 21 years old. I met my ex-husband when I was 18
Mhm.
at a really vulnerable time in my life. My mom was terminally ill. She had a chromosomal disorder and had all of these other issues going on. So my dad and I were at odds. I didn't have my mom, who was like the best person in the world, the most important person to me. And I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted someone to come in and take care of me. And boy, did he know how to, come in falsely and pretend to be all of those things. So when we got pregnant at 19, I wasn't scared. I was so excited to finally be able to be a mom like my mom was and step into that role. But oh man, I had no idea what we were kind of in for. So, we have 2 children together. And by the time we got pregnant with the second one, I was pretty terrified because I knew who he was at that moment. I knew exactly what our relationship was, but I was also raised Catholic. I'm an only child. My mom was still very up and down with her health issues, so I wasn't going to burden anybody else. And you don't get divorced, you make it work, you figure it out. And I just thought if I prayed on it hard enough and I loved him enough, he wouldn't feel the need to do those things to me anymore. So we got married in like this big church wedding, all of our friends and family there. About a year after, we lost my mom. And I thought that was going to be the tipping of the scales. And it was, but in the opposite direction, because now his phrase was, well, for better or for worse, Jess, this is just the worst. Like, what are you going to do? He had me where he wanted me because he knew I did not believe in divorce. I wasn't financially stable. I didn't have access to our funds. I didn't really have a career of my own. I hadn't been to college. So I felt trapped in a tremendous way. And a lot of people in our life had no idea what was going on. My friends kind of looked up to our relationship and thought, wow, that must be great to get married young. Our house literally had a picket fence around it at the time. Thankfully, I found the courage to leave, and I did not have to try multiple times. Statistically, anyone tries to leave up to 7 times before they get safe. And for whatever reason, thank goodness, I think it was just my mom, watching over me, giving me the will to survive. Honestly, I did not need that. Once I was out, I was out. I had no money. I had no career. I had no answers at all, no guidance. I did not know what we were going to do, but we were out and we were safe. And that was a huge step. But unfortunately, the system is hard, and it's not necessarily set up to assist domestic violence victims. It's because domestic violence oftentimes isn't, it can't be proved unless you are taking videos and pictures while you are being physically abused. And that's not the only form of abuse. So I couldn't really prove our abuse in court. We fought for custody for a decade, back and forth. My daughter is just a spitfire, super brave. She spoke out against her dad and the violence she witnessed and had to undergo herself. And it wasn't until he got remarried and then in 2017 almost killed her in an act of domestic violence that we finally had officially this sense of freedom. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the crimes committed against her. And it just, I mean, that's such a summarized version. I don't want to go into it too much and like trigger anyone. But it took a long time. So I always remind everyone when you see me now, like I'm remarried, we're so blessed and like very happy. But I got married in 2008 and it's now 2023 to my first husband in 2008. And it took until 2017 to have the safety closure on that part of our lives. And he's still the biological father of my two oldest children. So it's never going away. It's always a part of our story.
And I just want to interrupt real quick because you mentioned triggering people. And if you are triggered, like reach out.
Yeah.
Because, I don't just sit in your trigger.
I love that you said that.
Yeah.
You have to, when you feel triggered, like you said, sit in it and identify why you're triggered. And I know, given the past 5 or 6 years of me sharing publicly and connecting with incredible people, a lot of times we aren't aware that our relationship is abusive, whether it's a romantic relationship, a work relationship, within a family dynamic. Abuse is so much bigger than someone punching you. There's financial abuse, spiritual abuse is huge. Sexual abuse ran rampant in my marriage. No still means no in a committed relationship, always and forever. So if you do feel triggered, and if anything I'm bringing up makes you uncomfortable in a scary way, please reach out. You feel free to reach out to myself. I know there are resources across the country that exist, people you can just talk to, because that's an important step in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that a lot of people don't know that they're being abused even. And I've been married twice, I've been divorced twice, and
okay.
my first husband, we were married like 3 years, and when I was living in DC, Washington DC with him, met a friend that I met 2 people, or I made 2 friends while I was there. And one of them I'm still really close with. And she and I were talking about him the other day, about how likable he was. And I said that, nobody told me verbally to my, ahead of the marriage not to marry him. Everybody was saying it after the fact. Oh yeah, you shouldn't. I knew you shouldn't have married him. Like, thanks.
Like, thanks for the heads up.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was the conversation. But everybody told me before, marrying my second husband, not to marry him, and I didn't listen. And but I would have listened. I'm 99% sure, because I was such a people pleaser that if more than one person had told me not to marry my first husband, I absolutely would have called the wedding off. And that's just who I was at the time. But I was dead set on marrying my son's dad.
Yeah. Well, that's a different, when you have children together, it just heightens that connection.
Yes. And we didn't have kids before we got married, but I was very much in love with him. Whereas my first husband, I really felt that what I was going through emotionally at the time was that nobody else would want to marry me. And so I thought that I would be supported and by him, honestly, and protected by him. Like
Yeah.
I felt like I needed
Yeah.
support, or to be supported. And um, anyway, I was talking to this friend just the other day, and she said he was very emotionally, mentally, and like everything but physically abusive to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, what? I still,
Oh,
I like 15, we're 15 years plus divorce, and this is news to me. But like looking
wow.
back, I was like, huh, yeah, I
Maybe you're
absolutely.
right.
She said, I was watching and I was waiting for the
Oh,
physical. If the physical ever came, you were going to move in with me, and that was it. But
wow.
she's like, I didn't see any evidence, but he was manipulative and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, honestly, I'm glad that I didn't know,
Yeah.
because if I had left because of that, I definitely would have saw myself as a victim,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have adopted I already had somewhat of a victim mentality, but I would have very much adopted that, like, I can't because I'm a victim mentality.
Got it.
And um but as it was, I left
Mm-hmm.
essentially by choice. He said leave, but I was like, okay, I'm out.
Okay.
Peace out, buddy.
Bye.
I had tried to leave. I was one of those people that tried to leave multiple times, and there was always a manipulation into getting me back.
Yeah.
But as soon as he said leave, I was like, cool, not my decision anymore. I'm out.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
tough. They are so charming and manipulative. I mean, and if you've never been in, first of all, everyone has experienced some form of abuse in relationships.
Yeah.
Everyone has. However, if you have never been in a romantically abusive, toxic relationship, I know it can be hard to comprehend, but I can trust you, trust me, as an only child who went to Catholic school for 12 years, whose parents were married for 25 years before my mother passed. I was never going to be in that kind of relationship. I was genuinely taught better. And then you're in it. And before you know it, sometimes you never realize what it was and by what it is. And by the time you do, you're terrified and you don't know that the sky is blue and the grass is green anymore. 2 + 2 now equals 6 because that's what they're telling you.
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget when I told members of my family that I was leaving him because he was abusive and not a good guy. They were not happy with me. And they said things like, oh, but I mean, he just, the love in his eyes when you married him, or look how sweet he was at your mom's funeral. And that's such a limiting belief. And it's so detrimental to someone who is still, I was a victim at that moment in my life. And I have worked really hard to be in a place where it's okay to say that because I had not yet transitioned into the survivor and thriver position in my life. But when you're that fragile and I have no idea what I'm going to do, and I made the hardest decision of my entire life, and you're telling me, oh, but he doesn't seem that bad when you've met him maybe 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
that is why people go back. That is how people end up dead or almost dead. So I cut people out. That's one thing I really encourage others to do. Not forever. I have a relationship with my family now. But for your own safety, literal safety, you can only surround yourself with people that understand, uplift, and support you and encourage you at that moment in your life, at that season, because it's a war. And a lot of times it gets a little worse because it's very challenging if you have to get divorced, if you have to fight over custody, if there's any of those legal measures in place. It's never simple, but it is so worth it. It is so worth it to fight for your own safety because nobody deserves that. I don't care if it's physical, emotional, sexual. Stalking is abusive. Controlling behavior where you don't have access to the bank account is abusive. When they're guilting you because you were Catholic your whole life and you don't believe in divorce and God will hate you and you won't have a spot in heaven, that is abusive. There's so many different ways abuse happens that we're not taught. So really, when I get up on a soapbox like I did just now, I apologize. That's always my goal as an advocate, to be able to help people identify what abuse looks like and understand you can say no. And no is a sentence. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to give any kind of justification. It's just a no. And you get to choose better for your life. Yeah.
And when I mentioned the victim mentality, if it came out as,
oh gosh, no,
anything other than, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, it's an honest thing for you to be able to say. And I appreciate you saying that, because we are kind of taught like there's shame around being a victim. And that's why so many people have a hard time saying or admitting that they are a victim, that they were a victim. And I really try and eradicate that, because a victim isn't your choice. You don't choose to be a victim. That is somebody else's choice on your life. You can choose to be a survivor. So that's, I hate that you feel that way, but I know it's not rude or ill-intended at all. That's what we're taught to believe. If you're a victim of anything, oh, wow, well, you, maybe you should do better. Poor you. And I don't like attention. I don't like to ask for help. And at those moments in my life, I had to accept it, because I literally didn't know what was up and what was down. I was just like, somebody tell me the way, where to turn right, where to turn left. And I will listen at this point, because I have no idea who I even am anymore.
Yeah. I remember my mom, I don't know where this came from. I should ask her, but I remember my mom telling me that what she said to both my dad and then her current husband, was that basically, if you ever hit me, you better make it a good one, because it'll be your only opportunity.
Ooh.
And to my knowledge, nobody ever hit her.
Yeah.
And that was, and she didn't drill it into me like, don't ever let anybody hit you, but that was the message that I got.
Sure.
But that was the only abusive message that I got, of don't put up with. And I'm not, blaming her for anything.
Of course.
I didn't have an awareness. I was super, super naive, in which was a strength in certain areas of my life. I cherish that naivety. And I wish that I still had some of it, in some areas of my life. But it was very obvious that my first husband was an alcoholic. I didn't know what an alcoholic looked like.
Yeah.
I really didn't. He also hid it, but I had no idea what it looked like.
Right.
And, God bless my parents, because I had no idea what it looked like. That I had really good parents that weren't alcoholics.
Right. So how are you supposed to know?
I didn't have that experience at all. Anyway, what is something that you would have preferred to hear? Like, so instead of, oh, but he's so nice, how could you leave him? Like, so anybody who is listening and is tempted to say that to someone, what would have been something that you would have preferred to hear?
I love this. First of all, those kinds of thoughts are normal. I will say that when you are under the impression that someone's relationship is just perfectly lovely and you find these things out, it's very hard to comprehend. So those are normal questions. However, a better approach would be to wait until that person is ready to open those doors and just say words of encouragement. Oh, wow, Jess, I'm sorry to hear that. I had no idea. How can I support you? What can I do to best help you through this transition? Those phrases may sound cheesy, but that's all people need to hear. You don't even have to say, oh my gosh, what a terrible human being. Let's grab the pitchforks and torches and go take him down, take her down. This is awful. You just have to support. And if you have nothing to say, you honestly just, I'm so sorry. How can I support you? How can I love you through this? That's enough, because you're not going to be able to fix it. That's the other piece. Like, I'm very type A, and especially as a mom of four, like, I'm a fixer. We fix things, we get it done, and you can't fix this for someone else. It's very much like an alcoholic. They have to choose to get sober for themselves. Nobody else can shake them and want that bad enough for their life. So be there if they need to talk. And there will be times maybe there are tangible things that they need help with that they'll come to you for. But just know this isn't your battle to lead. It's your battle to just be in the lines behind the person leading it. It's hard, and they're going to need you. And I will also say, I always encourage people, if you know that you can't do that, you cannot sit by and watch this unfold. If the potential of that person going back to their abuser is too much for you to handle, you can bless and release them from your life in that season. Sometimes that's healthier, because if the flip side to that is if it's really hard for you and then you come from a place of like criticism and judgment and kind of casting shame on them. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you went back. You know better. I'm not going to be your friend anymore, or don't ever call me again. That's really counterproductive. And again, I'm not saying those aren't sometimes valid emotions to feel, but bless and release, love them. And you can be very honest and say, you know what, this is hard for me. And I love you. And I am here for you when you need me. But right now I can't be. Upfront honesty is always the best when you're handling those kinds of situations, because it's complicated enough already.
So anyone that is listening that's in an unhealthy relationship, is there anything that you want to speak to them?
There is help out there. There are people who will listen, who do have guidance, who have resources, and you don't have to choose this life anymore. It is not your fault. You did nothing to deserve it. Nothing. I don't care what you said, what you did, what you didn't do, what you forgot, how angry you made someone. Doesn't matter. Nobody deserves to be in that kind of situation. It's not easy, but you can choose a different life. You can be hopeful and choose to get safe and have more. You just have to be the one to want to do that.
Is there a place that they can reach out to? Is there a support system that you're connected with or familiar with in where
Absolutely.
They can contact? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a national domestic violence hotline. You can look up the number. It's an 800 number, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week hotline. There's always local resources. Sometimes those are hard to find. I actually run an organization called I Choose Hope. You can find us on Facebook. We run real quietly behind the scenes, but we have the Facebook page, so we're reachable, and we do just that. You don't have to be in Ohio. You don't have to be in a neighboring state or area. A lot of times I just talk to people and I make sure they know, you're right, it's not okay. You're not crazy. This is not a normal life for yourself. So there are tons of resources out there, but if you need to talk, you can always reach out to I Choose Hope, or you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms under Jess, JessPatz, and I will talk with you directly and help you try and find resources in your area if you need them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love to thank people who have taken their pain and turned it into something that helps others through their pain. So I think it's beautiful what you're doing, and I just wanted to say that because sometimes I forget.
Thank
But
you.
it was
No.
on my heart to say it right this minute, so I'm saying it now.
Thank you. You know, that means a lot, because it took a while for me to get to this place, and that's really what I try and help others do now. You don't have to have been through domestic abuse to relate to my story. We all have survived trauma and hardship, but we're taught to just bury it deep down. And now we have these layers of years of trauma that we're really ashamed of. And sometimes we're stuck in bad relationships. We're stuck in these awful jobs that we feel we've just got to clock in and clock out of. But we have this pulling at our soul, at our heart to do more, that maybe this isn't the purpose intended for the rest of our lives. And it probably isn't. We have to really uncover what the purpose is to the pain that we have buried deep down. And it's not fun. I can fully say firsthand, it's not always fun, but man, to live a life filled from your purpose is so much better than the alternative.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And my same friend I was talking to the other day, she was saying some mistake that she made when she was publishing a book of hers, and she said, well, live and learn. And I said, mine, I said, live, learn, and teach. Because she taught me
Ooh,
how to not do that same mistake because I'm about to, publish another book.
that's
And
exciting.
yes, and I was like, live, learn, and teach. If we're constantly teaching our lessons, then other people can learn from our mistakes. And that feels
Right.
good.
I mean, oh my gosh. I had the opportunity to go to an incredible conference in Atlanta this past weekend, and I saw Ed Milet speak on stage, and he is as enormous as you like. There are no words to describe the way he affected me. But one of my takeaways, Ed said, the best person you can help is the person you used to be.
Mm.
And I love that. I'm like, that is exactly what I try to do. And that's what we should all be trying to do. I got hung up for a minute personally on the fact that I don't have a college degree. I don't have certifications or fancy initials behind my name. So who am I? But that's hogwash. That is hogwash. We are capable of really affecting massive change within the universe. And if you don't know who needs to hear your story, it's those people, the people who are where you used to be. That's why your voice matters so much.
And it's so easy in our ever connecting world to touch other people's lives with your story, with your and there's healing inside of helping
Oh,
other people
oh my
with what you
gosh.
struggled with.
Yeah, it's a twofer.
Yeah.
100%. I started speaking really to give people who don't have the opportunity to share the voiceless a voice. But it was so therapeutic for me because for literally a decade, I was the crazy ex wife who was a liar and made all these things up. And now my truth was out there and I could just speak it. And it was so healing. And I genuinely could not have predicted the power behind my voice and my story. And everybody has that ability. I've had a couple of people recently at events say, but Jess, I don't have a story. I haven't been through an abusive relationship or lost someone I love so much. You don't have to go through that. Everybody has a story. What did one of my really good friends shared with me? She had experienced an abusive relationship in high school and it was controlling. And it was in a way that like I can't even speak to because on a high school level, it's so much different than what I went through in my 20s. Or jobs are tough right now. The past couple of years have been hard for everyone. We just need to normalize life is not the fancy cars and perfectly white and gray houses that we see all over our social media feeds. It's just not. That's how we make everyone else feel heard and feel less alone is by sharing our own stuff. And then we get our power back because we hold it back selfishly sometimes because we're fearful and we're insecure or we're shameful of those moments. We don't want the world to see that we have a sink full of dishes or that we don't do 8 loads of laundry every day, that my bookshelves are not color coordinated. We don't want the world to see that because what will they think? So then we screw that. It has so much power over us. And once you just start speaking from a place of authenticity, game over.
Yeah, absolutely. You've given a lot of advice, but is there another piece of advice that you want to share with our listeners?
Yes. And I touched on it a little bit. Be exactly who you are, exactly who you're meant to be. Rough around the edges, loud, quiet, introverted, extroverted, mom, choosing not to be a mom because you know that's not part of your purpose. Own it. Own it, all aspects of it. Being very open and authentic, that is how we connect with other humans. And our world is starved for that connection right now. You need to lean into that. I accidentally created a career by being authentic on a Facebook Live one day. And being authentic is not just ugly crying on the internet like Kim Kardashian, which is what I did originally. You can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can be irate, sad, all of these emotions. Share your failures, share your defeats, share your losses, because that's in the past then. Now you can share how far you've come. And I want to be able to cheer you on. I want you to say, oh my gosh, Jess, 2 years ago, I was here and these things were happening. And look where I am. And it doesn't have to be monetary. Your growth as a human being is so much more significant than the dollar amount in your bank account. Yeah. So just be you. Your voice means something to the world. I promise.
The funny thing about Kim Kardashian's ugly crying is like, it was so fake. Like that was so planned. It's so much of the earlier episodes. I'm a Kim Kardashian fan, but I like a little bit of drama in my life, as long as it's somebody else's drama and not mine. I used to love all drama of all kinds. Like I would feel alive inside of creating the drama.
That's a trauma response, by the way.
Is it really? It's interesting.
That is. When you're used to chaos and drama.
Okay.
Then that's what you kind of seek out.
I was like, where'd that come from? I think I know. Okay. Because usually the trauma happens, in your childhood and not later on in life. But I also, when I was 16 years old, when I was, as long as I could put two sentences together, I was writing. So, but when I was a teenager, I wrote romance stuff, and I believed there had to be drama. Like the drama is the thing that pushes the story forward. And to an extent, that's true.
Yeah.
So, I loved the drama, and then I was like, okay, I don't like the drama in my life anymore. I like to watch it on TV though. So, I watch the Kardashians and I watch my soap opera. And every once in a while, I get mad at my soap opera, which is Young and the Restless. I get mad at them because I'm like, if you would just have the conversation, it would be fine. I'm like, okay.
Right. Take a step back. I'm too invested.
You're getting way too invested.
Been there. I love reality TV. It's a break. I mean, listen, I recently actually just unfollowed a bunch of people like on my Instagram, and they're traditional like influencers, you could say. Nothing wrong with them as human beings. I just realized like it didn't make me feel good about myself, or I felt like I had pressure to shop or maybe do this and live a different lifestyle. But some of it's an escape. There are still people I follow and I aspire to maybe achieve some of their goals, or I'm so impressed by the arc of their story. And that's okay. One thing, it's like a speaking phrase, but debating, anticipating the opposition. Just anticipate the drama and trauma in your life. Things are going to go wrong. Some things may blow up in your face, whether things happen in threes like everyone says or not. That way, when it happens, it's not hopefully as shocking, because we know we have the tools and we're equipped to be able to deal with it. It's a season. It is a season. I got so much anxiety after my postpartum depression. And that's like my phrase. Everyone has some kind of coping skill, but that's when I feel so anxious and the world is out of control and I cannot figure out how to navigate. I'm like, this is a season. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know it's a season and it's going to pass. And tomorrow I get the opportunity to figure it out in a different way. So yeah, that's, because you asked about advice. My other big piece of advice is, especially right now, you don't need to have a seat at everybody's table. I feel as an entrepreneur, especially as a mom, you have the hustle culture of you are just meeting new people and networking and meeting this person and they're going to elevate your career. And there's so much truth to that. So much truth. Who is like a cheat sheet to your future. Absolutely. However, if somebody isn't for you and you get the icks and it doesn't feel right in your soul, it doesn't matter how successful they are, what connections they may or may not have, how much money they have behind them. They're not for you. They're not your people. Because all that does is you're now connected to somebody going forward that right away you're not going to be aligned with. And it sets it up for some kind of awkward conversation in the future, or in, bad relationship that you don't want to be a part of. Trust your gut. That's one thing I'm personally working on, learning and growing and meeting all of these new people as I kind of go on different journeys, specifically within my career, is I'm not going to be for everyone. I've always said that, but you know what? You may not be for me, and I can love you from afar and celebrate you. And that's okay. I don't need you in my life just because somebody else says that I do. So be empowered to make that choice for yourself, for sure.
I love that. That's perfect. Is there a book that you wanted to recommend that's been instrumental in your personal development journey?
I have now read it twice. Atomic Habits. I'm sure we have all heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it?
I have it on
It's
Audible.
Upstairs. I'm not like, because I'm not a systematic person. I always say I live a life of like organized chaos. We go with it. We try and figure it out. Our schedules are nuts. But that book really breaks down the importance of having small habit changes. And it just made it seem simple that we can have, if you put your car keys here, it's automatically going to trigger me to take my vitamins in the morning and then do this and then do this. And then we work on autopilot. And it's that kind of Steve Jobs mentality where he wore the same thing every day. So it was one less decision. Take some of the struggle out of those everyday decisions. I love it. It may not be for everyone, but I adapted it to work in my life and it was very beneficial. I love that book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being a guest on the podcast and having this amazingly deep conversation about stuff that people like to sweep under the rug. Like we don't need to talk about this because it's uncomfortable, and it'll only stay uncomfortable as long as we pretend that it doesn't exist.
You're 100% right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So there will be another episode of Imperfect Momming for you guys next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.